fake kidnapping murder trial.
Defendant Jeannine Jaramillo is accused of causing a crash that killed a police officer and a retired firefighter.
Prosecutors say Jaramillo faked a kidnapping and then led police on a high-speed chase while traveling the wrong way on a busy highway.
Let's get you back into court now for the judge's verdict.
Foreperson of the jury, without reading the verdict, have you reached a verdict?
Yes, we have, Your Honor.
All right, can you hand them to me, Ronnie? Let me look at them. Why don't you see if you can move that microphone up a little closer to the foreperson and make sure it's on. Just a minute, I'm looking for, did you leave any paperwork?
I don't think so.
I think you left one piece of paper in there. Yeah, we're not, just, we got to do this very formally. Barney, I'm going to write something out to you. Can you get this? What, is it easy to find, do you think? Okay. It's the... You know what I'm talking about?
I think so, Your Honor.
Okay, well, we'll all have to go together. It's one of the verdict forms. All right, you may be seated. You may be seated. All right, I'm going to ask the foreperson to read the verdict, if that's acceptable to the foreperson, and certainly you're going to read the ones that you've signed. Okay? Ronnie? Will the defendant stand, please? We like to keep them in that order, but you can just read the ones that you've signed.
This State of New Mexico versus Jeannine Jaramillo. We find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in count 1. State of New Mexico versus Jeannine Jaramillo. We find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in count 2. State of New Mexico versus Jeannine Jaramillo. We find the defendant guilty of great bodily injury by vehicle, reckless driving, as charged in count 3. State of New Mexico versus Jeannine Jaramillo. We find the defendant guilty of aggravated fleeing a law enforcement officer as charged in count 4. State of New Mexico versus Jeannine Jaramillo. We find the defendant guilty of receiving or transferring stolen vehicles or motor vehicles as charged in count 5. The State of New Mexico versus Jeannine Jaramillo. We find the defendant guilty of making a false report as charged in count 6. The State of New Mexico versus Jeannine Jaramillo. We find the defendant guilty of reckless driving as charged in count 7.
All right, thank you.
Wow. So Jeannine Jaramillo, not a surprise, found guilty of all counts. There were 8 counts total. The highest count, of course, being that first-degree murder. That was really the only question I had, whether they were going to find sufficient depravity to find her guilty of that first-degree murder, which obviously they did.
Right, and you mean the one, not the felony, but the first.
The highest one.
Yeah, with the depraved mind,
yes.
yeah, and they found her guilty of both. To your point, just want to mention that she won't be sentenced on both. It's double jeopardy,
Yes.
so it's only going to be that very top count.
Yeah, it becomes double jeopardy, so you cannot convict on 2 and be sentenced on both. All right, let's bring in our guest with us this hour, civil rights and trial attorney Adante Pointer. Adante, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Want to get your thoughts on this decision by the jury. As you know, as far as we're concerned, it was clearly no surprise.
Yeah, it wasn't a surprise for me either. I mean, we understood, listening to the closing arguments, looking at the evidence come in, that this train, if you will, of justice was only headed in one direction, and that was conviction. You know, the only suspense might have been, could they reach the highest charge? But I think what was very telling and very persuasive and really did the defendant in is her admissions to the police afterwards, that she did it essentially for fun. And that's the type of thing that it doesn't engender any sympathy or compassion from the jury, and frankly was the nail that nailed the coffin close.
What do you think about the fact that they didn't present a defense? So they didn't put on any evidence. She didn't testify. There was nothing about her mental health or substance abuse on the defense's end. And in fact, there was an opening statement, a closing statement, but really they didn't have much to argue on her behalf.
Well, you know, they may not have had much to work with, but putting up some defense as opposed to kind of the Olay defense, you're sitting there, you just move out the way when the bull's coming at you. Well, you know, it hit pay dirt. And so I don't think that went well for her, and I'm sure she'll be second-guessing that strategy all the way to the prison.
And that's right, Michael. I think you reminded me there was no opening statement, just the closing. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask you about, Adante. There wasn't any opening. I don't think it would have made by the defense. And we're actually looking at a live scene there as folks are filing back into the courtroom as they are going to begin sentencing at this point. Again, we're expecting family members to give victim impact statements. So we'll get you there as soon as they get going in that courtroom. But Adante, the defense decided not to give an opening statement. I'm not a fan of that. I mean, I think it's really a case-by-case basis, depending on, maybe you're still trying to figure out which way you're going to go based on the state's case. But I often like to give the jury some signposts, some idea of how to take in the evidence based on the way I want them to look at it.
Right. I mean, not giving an opening statement is definitely a strategic decision. I don't think that inured to her benefit. Obviously, a defendant and the attorney should talk about that. But you're right. An opening statement allows the jury to understand what the context that you want to put in their mind, or a narrative that you want them to consider as they evaluate the evidence through the course of the trial, as opposed to just giving the prosecutor a blank page to fill in and allow the jury to just essentially hear it one-sided. I'm not a fan of that strategy, but I understand if you don't have much to work with, as they say, sometimes saying nothing is better than saying something.
So the sentencing hearing that's about to begin, there is a lot hanging in the balance for her because she faces on that top charge of the first-degree murder, life in prison, but with parole or without parole. One means she could see the light of day outside of the jail, and the other, Dante, means she wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, in doing this business, as you all as well, and working with people, you understand when people get sentenced to prison, the idea that you're never coming home, there's no opportunity, oh man, it's devastating, on top of the fact that you're going to prison to begin with. So that's a big distinction. You may one day see home, you may one day have freedom, or the idea that it's completely a foreclosed conclusion that you'll see your last day, breathe your last breath in prison. That's a heavy thing for her to be weighing, and I'm sure as well for her family, despite the carnage that she caused.
Yeah, and good luck on that. When you kill two people because you wanted to have a little fun, and this is what you call fun.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a problem. Dante, stand by. Folks, we're going to take a break. We're waiting. We're standing by. We're going to be bringing that sentencing to you live as soon as it gets going. So keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Quote.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott here with Michael Ayala, and we are in New Mexico this afternoon for the sentencing hearing for Jeannine Jaramillo.
Now, she was found guilty earlier this month of causing a crash that killed a police officer and a retired firefighter after she lied about a kidnapping and then led police on a high-speed chase down the opposite side of a busy highway.
You really can't make that up. It sounds unbelievable. Now, here's the live look at the sentencing. We're waiting for that to begin. While we wait, let's take a listen to some post-verdict reaction after the jury found the defendant guilty of all charges.
What are you thinking? Talk to me about the verdict.
Well, we're so relieved, of course, that we were able to get justice for the victims, particularly Robert Duran and Frank Lovato, but all of the victims that experienced what they experienced that day. And so we're relieved. It's hard to say happy, but we are happy, and we believe justice was served.
Didn't see a lot of emotion on the other side there, which we were picking up a bunch of that during the trial. Any thoughts on that, or would?
I don't know. Maybe she knew it was coming. The case was tight against her, and it could not have gone better for my prosecution team. And we really put in the work and the effort to make sure that we got this outcome.
Was there any one thing you think that kind of sealed the deal? I mean, it was a pretty quick turnaround with the jury. Anything that?
No, I can't think of one thing. This was a team effort, and I especially want to shout out our case agent, Wyatt Harwell, with the New Mexico State Police. He put together an excellent case, and I think it was every witness that came in and told their part of this investigation or their part of the story. And I think just the culmination, it was just overwhelming. So,
did you get a chance to glean anything from the family or talk to them? They looked like they were relieved as I walked by quickly. But
very relieved, very emotional. They're obviously happy with the outcome, but this has been a trying 2-year period for them. It's been absolutely awful. And so I think they're glad that it's over and that they got the outcome that their family members deserved.
Sentencing is going to be set and whatnot. What are you thinking is going to happen in sentencing? Do you have any?
She'll get life. It's an automatic sentence here in New Mexico, and so that's what she'll be getting.
Very good. What haven't I asked you think's important? I'm opening up. I mean, anybody else want to? I mean,
do you want to say?
Everybody seemed like you did a great job. I mean, it was a very solid case.
Yeah, it was, like Mary said, it was a team effort. Everybody really pulled. You don't see what goes on behind behind us, but we had an office full of support, a community full of support, and we're incredibly grateful. I would say that if there's one word that really kind of sums up this case from beginning to end, is that it's unbelievable. And it's really hard to put into words what we were able to really kind of shore up and present to the jury, and they made the right decision.
No, the evidence seemed, I mean, the way you got that all organized, and there was so much evidence, very well presented. Everything from, I mean, we talked about the letter. I know you had dealt with the case up north where it was like a mirror image of anything else anyone wants to add that I didn't ask.
It's just the preparation. The difference in this case, with the evidence was always strong, but the preparation in this case is what put it over the top.
Agreed.
Perfect. And Paul, can you remind us what your involvement was in this entire case?
So I am the chief of police for the department. Officer Robert Duran is one of my officers.
Tell me a little bit about just the entire, this was almost a week-long trial. How has it been just going through it all and having to relive everything? How has it been for you?
Well, I really want to recognize and appreciate the family for Mr. Lovato and our officer, Robert Duran. The trauma of having to go through all this again and experience all this again, it's been heavy for them, it's been heavy for us, but I really want to express my appreciation and gratitude to the families for going through all of this all over again.
Tell us, too, you lost a brother in all of this, too. How do you feel today hearing the jury's verdict? Do you think you guys got justice today?
Well, I want to express my gratitude to District Attorney Carmack Altois and her team for the work that they've done in this case. We're still processing it. I express my gratitude to the jury as well. They had a hard job. I know these cases aren't easy to hear and sit through. I'm happy that they came back with the verdict that they did. It was the right verdict. And hopefully we can all keep moving forward. You can't, you don't move on with grief or move past it. All we can do is take it and move forward.
So prosecutors basically feeling the same way we felt. This whole thing just so unbelievable.
It's so unbelievable, but the way they brought it all together with their team to present pretty much an airtight case, in my opinion.
Yeah, and he called it. He said it was all about preparation.
Yes.
Even though it was pretty much a slam dunk, you still have to prepare and present it the right way, which I think everyone agrees they did.
Absolutely. All right, let's at least show pictures. I understand before we bring our guests and the judges on the bench, we're waiting on audio. Again, this is the sentencing hearing. We're going to be bringing all of it to you and any victim impact statements. And she faces life with parole or without parole. That's one of the decisions for the court in this case. Let's bring back in Adante Pointer. Actually, Adante, stand by. There's audio. Let's go into court.
For the state, also counsel table is case agent Wyatt Harwell with State Police.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, Your Honor. David Shelby on behalf of Jeannine Jaramillo.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is the sentencing. Go ahead.
It is, Your Honor. And just in terms of structure, and I'll defer to the court, I would like to save the state's argument on sentencing for after the victims have addressed the court. I do have a packet of victim impact statements for Your Honor, if I may approach.
Sure. You have it?
Over.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And if Your Honor is ready, we'll start with the Lovatos first. We'll go in order of the charges and the information, and starting with count one. The Lovatos are of course present, Your Honor, but we will be reading their victim impact statement to Your Honor from the podium.
All right.
Your Honor, the first statement is from Andres Lopez, the grandson of Frank Lovato. He says, on March 2nd, 2022, my family's lives were heavily impacted by the sudden death of my grandfather, Frank Lovato. No one was able to process the sudden tragedy that struck, leaving an everlasting effect on us for the rest of our lives. My grandfather was there for any one of us. Anything we needed help with or advice on, he was there to help. In times of trouble or sorrow, he always had a way to stay positive and never gave up, to push us through those rough times. A husband, father, and grandpa were all stripped away from the lives of my family and I. Our lives will never be the same heading forward. There are many more triumphs, tribulations, and memories yet to be made for our family, though it will never be the same and truly fulfilling to us all, knowing my grandfather, Frank Lovato, isn't there with us at our side, all at the hands of Jeannine Jaramillo. And again, that was Andres Lopez. The second letter is from Charlene Lopez, daughter of Frank Lovato. On March 2nd, 2022, our lives were completely turned upside down by the reckless and selfish acts of Jeannine Jaramillo. That day, two great men lost their lives. Officer Robert Duran in the line of duty, and my father, Frank Lovato, a retired firefighter who was an innocent motorist on his way home. What should have been a normal day quickly became a horrific tragedy for our families. From that day forward, anything positive that has happened or will happen in our lives will be followed by sadness, grief, and heartbreak because my father isn't there. My children will never again hear their grandfather cheer them on from the sidelines at their sports events or school activities. We will forever feel the emptiness during every birthday, anniversary, and holiday because we no longer have my dad. A smile at our table, a role model for my children, and a loving father, grandfather, and friend are just a few of the things that have been taken from us. We will have to learn to live with the emotional trauma that has become an everyday struggle in our lives. Anywhere we are, we see and hear things that are constant reminders of my father. Whether it be a song on the radio he would always sing to, a corny joke he would tell, or even seeing a fire truck drive through town, it has made breaking down into tears at random moments in our day the new norm, all as a result of the actions of Jeannine Jaramillo. And again, that was Charlene Lopez. Thank you, Your Honor.
We are going to need to squeeze in a break. Those were the first two impact statements. They were read by the state's office. We're going to take a break. When we come back, of course, we're going to get you back into court for more of the sentencing hearing and victim impact statements.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, breaking down today's big hearing in the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. We'll bring you the latest as our experts weigh in.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
It's the biggest story that we're covering.
He is the boogeyman.
Lori Daybell.
She said, "I will have you destroyed."
She's got another murder trial coming up.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Last month, a jury in New Mexico found Jeannine Jaramillo guilty on all charges, and today we are bringing you her sentencing. The now convicted felon faced 30 years behind bars for making up a story that she was kidnapped and then leading the police on a high-speed chase that claimed the lives of two people, including an officer. We're going to get you back into court now for more of Jaramillo's sentencing hearing. Speaking now is the brother of Officer Robert Duran.
My name is Dominic Duran, Robert Duran's brother. On March 2nd, 2022, my family was given a life sentence. A sentence of never getting to see my brother Robert again, or hearing his voice, his laugh, never getting to see his big smile, or feeling his big tight hugs again. A piece of all of us died that day, and my family will never be the same. Today, Your Honor, I'm asking that you sentence this person to life in prison for the murder of my brother Robert, and for all the heartache and pain my family will live with for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, Your Honor, we have Angela Gamino, Robert's sister.
Your Honor, my name is Angela Gamino, and I am the sister of Officer Robert Duran, who tragically lost his life in the line of duty on March 2nd, 2022. It is with a heavy heart that I stand before you today, attempting to put into words the immense grief and devastation our family has experienced since losing him. On the morning of March 2nd, 2022, I was driving alone to Las Cruces to visit my youngest child, my daughter. She was attending college at NMSU, and we were looking forward to having some mom and daughter time. While on the road, I called my brother Dominic to check in with him and to let him know I would be away for a few days. Then I called my mom during her lunch break to talk with her and let her know I had headed out. I wanted to call Rob, but I knew he was at work and he was always so busy, so I didn't want to bother him. I thought I'll call him later after his shift. We're all so close and always let each other know where we are. As I was entering Las Cruces, I received a phone call from a family member, and they said something was going on in Santa Fe involving the police. Have I heard from Rob recently? I thought, oh, okay, I'm sure everything's okay, but I'll call Rob now. I called him, and he didn't answer. I called again, and still no answer. I text him, Rob, are you okay? Answer, and still nothing back. The panic started to set in. I know if something was going on, Rob would let us know he was okay. He may be busy, but I know he would try to take a quick second to let me know he's okay because he wouldn't want us to worry. But I never got a call or text back. Right then, my daughter called to see if I had made it into town. She was just getting off of work. I told her, yes, I'm here, but I just heard something's going on in Santa Fe involving the police. And an officer possibly passed away. I can't get a hold of Rob. She said, I'll try to call him too, Mom, and I'm on my way to the house. I'll meet you there. In that time, I was making more phone calls, still panicking. Why isn't Rob responding? Then I felt this calmness over me. It ran through my body, and in that second, that's when I knew it was Rob. I remember thinking, I know it's him. He's no longer with us. Shortly after that, a call came in, and we had gotten confirmation that it was Rob. My daughter pulled in at that time. I opened the door for her and just yelled out, it was Robert. She screamed, no, and began crying. I remember that scream and the heartache that came through in that scream. We learned later it was captured on the Ring camera. I called my sons to let them know what had happened and that they were both in shock. They couldn't say much. I told them head to Uncle Rob's house and we're on our way back home. My kids loved their Uncle Rob more than anything. They looked up to him. He was a role model and a hero to them. They thought their Uncle Rob was invincible. This isn't happening because nothing could ever happen to their Uncle Robert. An uncle of mine that lives in Las Cruces drove my daughter and I back home. All the thoughts that ran through my head on the road trip back. Is this really happening? What's exactly going on? What do we do without Rob? I felt scared to think of my world without him. My nephews, his boys, he still has kids to raise. I was so anxious to get back to my family and so thankful I had my daughter with me and that she wasn't away at college while all this was happening. We arrived to Rob's house that evening where our family was gathered. People inside and people outside the house with looks of shock and despair. I'm the oldest sister. I'm the only daughter, and I'm a mom.
Attorney Adante.
Everyone comes to me. I take care of things. I fix things. I felt so helpless.
Still with us, civil rights and trial attorney Adante Pointer. And let me just say this. If you didn't think she would get no parole or life, if you thought she would get life with parole, listening to that fourth statement from the sister of Officer Duran, I think anyone listening would say, forget it. She gets no parole, Adante.
Agreed. If you listen to these statements, think about and consider the evidence that was presented at trial, the chances for her ever seeing the light of day of freedom are gone. They're dashed. Forget about it. And you see why. Listen to the devastation that she caused and how cavalierly she caused it, and then blamed it on some imaginary person that supposedly kidnapped her, all for the thrill, all for fun. And on top of that, when you look at her demeanor in the courtroom, I haven't seen her shed a single tear, not even an alligator tear. No tears, no emotion at all. She goes down to her face for the first time and comes up with nothing other than another blank stare. I don't think the jury, or I should say, the judge is going to have any compassion on her. It's over.
There is a bit of a blank stare, but I thought I saw her get a tissue, wipe her eyes a couple of times, and it kind of goes to the point I was going to make was, I'm glad. I am so glad at these sentencing hearings that these folks the defendants have to sit there and listen to family members talk about their grief and feel the pain that they caused. I am so glad of that because, she needs to feel that, needs to understand, her idea of fun and what the results were. But let me ask you, Adante, as a defense attorney, and I know you're seeing all kinds of things, I still can't make out what was going on. This is a 49-year-old woman who thought it would be fun to do this type of thing. Not once, but she did it before as well. I mean, maybe there was drugs involved. There was some methamphetamine in one of her cars previously. I don't know, but any thoughts at all on what this might be about for this person?
You'd hope that it's not just somebody who's just a thrill seeker, an adrenaline junkie, and this is how they get their fix. You would almost feel better knowing that she had some sort of addiction, some type of, narcotic in her system that made her have some altered sense of reality. As you sometimes hear people think it's a video game. But unfortunately in life, you don't get a do-over. You don't get another man or woman to play in your video game. It's one and done. And in this one for her, she caused other people to lose their life, and now she's going to lose life as she knows it.
And I feel like if she had not been convicted, she would do it again because she's a thrill seeker.
No doubt.
All right, thank you, Adante Pointer, as always, for joining us this hour.
Folks, coming up, we'll have more from the sentencing phase in the fake kidnapping murder trial of Jeannine Jaramillo. Remember, this is Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.
.com.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala.
And I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. Court TV is tracking several big cases. In North Carolina, the judge sentences the defendant in the killing in a convenience store trial to 64 to 89 months in prison for the stabbing death of customer Mark Garrity Jr. Taz Zarka had claimed he was defending himself when he got into an altercation with Garrity over an alleged stolen bottle of Gatorade.
In the teacher's deadly driving trial in Colorado, defendant Amy Weiss told the judge that she would not testify in her own defense.
And in New Mexico, it's sentencing day for Jeannine Jaramillo in the fake kidnapping murder trial. Jaramillo faces up to 30 years in prison for the deaths of 2 people, including a police officer. This happened back in March of 2022.
She actually faked her own kidnapping and then led police on a high-speed chase while she was traveling the wrong way. Retired firefighter Frank Lovato swerved to miss her and then crashed head-on into a cruiser driven by Santa Fe police officer Robert Duran, killing them both.
The sentencing phase is now underway, compelling victim impact statements. Right now, the sister of Officer Duran is still giving her victim impact statement. We hit the pause button. Let's get you back into court.
I felt so helpless. This was something I couldn't fix. Nothing I can do but look at my family and see everyone's tears and brokenness. Our family has been completely shattered, and there is nothing I can do to fix this. Since that day, our lives have become a blur of grief, confusion, and disbelief. Every day is a struggle to come to terms with the fact that he is gone and how unfairly he was taken from us. The pain of losing him, especially under such senseless circumstances, is overwhelming. We are left with an unavoidable, unfillable void in our lives. His absence has deeply affected our emotional well-being as well as our day-to-day lives. My mom, who raised him to be the courageous and honorable man he was, is completely lost and devastated without him. Her heart is broken, and she carries the weight of losing her son every single day. We often hear her let out such huge sighs. She doesn't even realize she does it, but we know it's a sigh of heaviness and just trying to remember to breathe every second of every day. Her recent words after the trial, "I gave him life, and it was taken away by someone who blamed him for trying to save her life." Talk about breaking a mother's heart all over again. How can a human mind even comprehend that? It's heart-shattering and completely incomprehensible. My mom tried to return to work a couple of months after losing my brother. She's a medical assistant and has been for several years. Unfortunately, the doctor she worked for didn't show much compassion for what she was going through. Just getting up in the morning took so much out of her. Then she would drive to work, sit in the parking lot for a while, letting the tears out, and trying to catch her breath before walking in to start her day. There was a TV in the waiting room, and once while pulling back patients, the news was on, and Rob's picture came on the screen, and she broke down and had to leave work. Another day, an officer in uniform entered the building. It startled her, she gasped, and broke down. The doctors, not completely understanding these are all triggers for her, told her, take a leave of absence and come back when you're 100%. My mom was trying so hard to be okay. She tried to return to work after her leave, but continued to struggle to get through her days. And due to her absences, she ended up being terminated from her job. This was very upsetting to us. She tried, but who was ever 100% after losing a child? Because of the job termination and the trauma she has endured from losing her son, my mom struggles financially still to this day. I suffer from depression and struggle with motivation. I haven't yet, but plan to seek counseling in the near future and now understand the true meaning of PTSD and how any little sight and sound can bring back such memories and flashbacks that run instantly through your head. I can't stand the sound of police sirens. I've been on the road when police cars go flying past me with their lights and sirens on. I begin to shake and cry and have had to pull over. Anytime I see a unit with lights and sirens on, I just pray to God those officers stay safe and make it home to their families. I miss my brother every single day. I miss our talks, our visits, our camping trips together. He loved to be out in the mountains. We since have sold our RV because we just can't get ourselves to go camping again. It just wouldn't be the same without him. We have been forced to adjust to a world that he is no longer a part of, a world that feels incomplete without him. The future now feels uncertain for me, and every milestone our family reaches is bittersweet without him by our side. We have all struggled in our own way while trying to figure out how to continue on with our lives. Jobs were lost, careers were changed, classes were failed. Some buried themselves in busyness to try to create distraction. And a family that was once so close has struggled in our relationships because how does the broken help the broken? While the weight of his loss is deeply felt, it is comforting to remember the incredible man he was and the countless ways he touched people's lives. He made lasting impacts on everyone around him. I'd like to share some of the things that he did to show what kind of heart he had. There was a time he would get up extra early to help a man who was having car trouble. Rob would drive to this man's house in the morning to help him get his car started so the man could get to work on time. He would take time to stop by and check in on a lady and her children after she was involved in a domestic situation. She told me she was so grateful that he took the time to do that. One Christmas, a radio station was offering a $500 gift card to a family in need. Rob knew a family that could use this money. He took the time to sit down, write a letter, and his letter was chosen, and he won the gift card for that family. He would go through his boys' closets and pull out clothes that no longer fit and take them to a neighbor who was a single mother with children who could use them. He called my kids every single first day of school from preschool through their high school years to wish them a good first day. He always wanted them to know he was thinking of them and he loved them. This was the kind of guy he was. He cared for people. His heart was huge. He did these kinds of things all the time, never for acknowledgement. That's just who he was. Of course, it would be him who joined the pursuit that day. There was a life in danger, and he jumped in to help save that life and to help back up his fellow officers. I'm sure you can ask any of them, and they would all be able to tell you Rob was definitely the guy you can count to have your back. In the past 2.5 years, I couldn't and I didn't have hate for Jaramillo. She took so much away from us that I couldn't let her take my peace from me too. During the trial, I couldn't stop thinking, that is what my brother lost his life over. He cared more for her life that day than she did. My brother died trying to save her life. Her sorry but not sorry letter, it was also very hurtful and upsetting to hear the details of her accounts when my brother gave the ultimate sacrifice. 2 beautiful lives were lost, 2 families that will never be the same. We will never again celebrate birthdays or holidays with our loved ones. There will forever be a painful void in these families. In closing, I ask that this court and everyone who hears our story understand this senseless tragedy's profound and lasting impact. The emotional toll it's taken on our family and all the people involved that day. The depth of our loss, not only to us, but the Santa Fe Police Department, law enforcement families, and the community that lost a dedicated officer. Justice for Officer Robert Duran, my brother, is a small step in our healing. While we can never undo the pain of his death, we hope that by sharing our story, the maximum sentence is given so no other family has to endure the pain and suffering she has caused our family. May the severity of this crime, her criminal history, and the lack of remorse Jaramillo shows all be considered. Jaramillo is a danger to the public. She has no regard for her own life, much less anyone else's. Thank you.
Thank you.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we will hear from the wife of Officer Robert Duran. Stay here with us on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, breaking down today's big hearing in the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. We'll bring you the latest as our experts weigh in.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV. Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
All right, folks, before we head back to court, I want to bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us, trial attorney Michael Jaffer. Michael, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining the judge and I on the program. I want to get your thoughts about this case. And you know, one of the things that was said early on by the prosecutor, she was doing her post-trial press conference, saying, she said, the one word that describes this case to her is unbelievable. And I think we all agree. I mean, it's just unbelievable what happened here. There's really, I haven't yet to hear any explanation.
This woman's a monster. What she did was evil. She's an evil monster. She had this sick fetish for hurting other people because the person who actually died, the person who should have died should have been hurt, but the person who actually died was actually a hero. Think about it. That police officer was not chasing her because he wanted to pull her over and give her a ticket. He was chasing her because he thought he was rescuing her from a kidnapping. He actually thought the woman was kidnapped. He drove up to 90 miles an hour in the opposite lane of traffic. I wouldn't do that for anybody, right? If I was a police officer, I would just sit on the side of the road. I'd be too scared to do that. He did it. Right? He chased this woman. So obviously she's just an evil woman. I hope the judge gives her 10 million years in prison. By the way, what I was thinking is New Mexico got rid of the death penalty back in 2009. This would have been a nice case eligible for death for death penalty. And I would have been a big supporter of this woman being put to death. Terrible, terrible conduct.
Terrible. And as Officer Duran's sister said, a senseless tragedy. So we know on the top count she faces life no matter what, but it's whether or not it's going to be with parole or without parole. In your experience, victim impact statements often are for the benefit of the victim to have that opportunity to speak. This one, though, that sister of the officer, how much do you think that might influence the court, Michael?
I think it's done. I think based on what she said, him calling her kids on their first day of school, I have nieces and nephews. I felt terrible. I felt like a bad person. This man is a better man than me, right? I have nieces and nephews. I thought about it. I hadn't called any of them first day of school. I'm going to start doing it now because of watching that victim impact statement. If it had that much of an impact on me and I'm watching it from my computer, imagine what it's going to do for the judge and for this woman's prospects. I think it was very impactful.
I agree.
Yeah, and ultimately, she, as one of our producers said, she looks relatively inconvenienced being there.
Yes.
She doesn't look impacted at all, and we're impacted. Anyway, Michael, stand by. I want to get folks back to court now, where the wife of the victim's officer, Robert Duran, is now giving her victim impact statement.
I frequently speak of my husband and love to share memories with him and family and friends. I don't often speak about the events of March 2nd or the impact his loss has had on me and our sons. It's still difficult to talk about, and I will do my best to share the impact with you as clearly as possible. But before I share the impact of losing my husband, I'd like you to know what he meant and still means to me. We met in December 2003 at our nephew's preschool Christmas pageant after a not-so-subtle introduction by our matchmaking sisters. And we pretty much were inseparable from that day. In the early stages of our relationship, I saw how much he loved his family and how great he was with his niece and nephews. I knew I had found a kindred spirit, someone I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We became engaged in 2004, and although I imagined we would grow old together, it turned out to just be 18 years we would have together. In that time, we raised 2 sons. Robert loved spending time with his sons. He attended countless sporting events and even helped coach a few of their teams, as well as school concerts and events. He loved the outdoors, and we enjoyed camping and hunting trips as a family. He taught them how to ride bikes, fish, and our oldest son how to drive a car. He had most of the tough conversations with them when they made bad decisions or were going through a tough time. He taught them about religion and shared his faith with them. I still remember how precious it was to see him teaching them the Lord's Prayer and saying it with them at night as he tucked them into bed. We were together for 11 years before he became a police officer in 2015. We discussed it a few times over the years, and I knew it was something he had wanted to do since a young boy. But we either couldn't afford the initial pay cut, or I needed him at home to help with the kids. At this point, being at least the 3rd time we discussed it, and our children were a little older, I encouraged him to apply. I didn't want to be the person standing in the way of his dream. At the age of 35, with a lot of life experience and a passion to help others, he joined the Santa Fe PD. Making it through the academy was a challenge for our whole family, and he spent much of his time home on the weekends, resting or studying. I still remember helping him memorize 10 codes on flashcards. His 7 years with Santa Fe PD were not always easy. There were days he would come home laughing and smiling with a funny story to tell, and others that he would come home and hold me tight without saying anything, and I knew it had been a bad day. He would usually talk about it eventually, but sometimes he didn't want to burden me with what he had experienced that day. The calls that haunted him the most were when lives were lost. Suicide, drug overdose, car accidents, gunshot wounds, pedestrian hit and run. He responded to all of these and so much more. He's cried over calls where children were found in deplorable living conditions and had to be taken away from their parents, and a mother and her children kicked out of where they were staying on Christmas Eve with nowhere to go. Despite the constant heartbreak, he continued to return shift after shift. Plenty of times he considered leaving and pursuing a different career, but he always went back because of the days he was able to help someone, to save someone, like he was trying to do for Jeannine Jaramillo on March 2nd, 2022, a day that's forever etched in my memory. I first learned there was a serious situation in Santa Fe from my sister-in-law who had heard officers were being called in for an emergency situation and had not been able to get in touch with Robert. I tried to reassure her that he's probably busy with whatever situation was and had not responded to messages I had sent him earlier the day either, and that I would try to find out more information. At this point, the news was reporting a high-speed pursuit and crash but only showing the crashed Chevy Malibu. I tried to reassure myself that everything was fine, and he would text me back as soon as he could. It did not take long before the headlines confirmed that an officer and one other person had been killed in the pursuit. As my heart sank and I tried to call my husband to check in on him, he still didn't answer. Minutes ticked by, and I was too scared to call the police department and possibly find out that it was my husband who'd been killed. I eventually worked up the nerve to use Facebook Messenger to contact another officer who was friends with Robert and asked what was going on. After a few minutes, he messaged me back and asked me for my phone number. And at that moment, I knew that my husband was gone and he would not be coming home. I waited in shock at my desk for the chief to call me and say we needed to talk in person. We agreed to meet at my house, and I drove home knowing my children would be arriving home from school soon. As I arrived home to cop cars in front of my house and family members already arriving, I spotted my oldest son turning the corner walking home from school. He paused a few houses away, unsure of what to do, and a piece of me broke knowing I was going to have to tell him his father was dead. The chief explained to me what had happened that morning, and the only thing I could think to ask was, where is he now? I wanted to see my husband's body and to know it was true and to hold him one last time. I was told that wasn't possible, that he was still on scene and would be transported to OMI for an autopsy before he could be taken to a funeral home. As I pictured my husband's lifeless body on the side of the road, waiting to be transported, I had another question. I asked, is she okay? The woman in the car. I was informed that she had some injuries and was taken to the hospital, but it would be okay, and they were still searching for the driver who had fled. And although my husband was gone, I hurt for him, knowing how devastated he would be that someone besides himself was lost on that day, and he would miss so much of our children's lives. My grief and devastation for my family and the Lovato family in that moment, despite my grief and devastation for my family and the Lovato family in that moment, I was relieved that his sacrifice was not in vain, that she was alive. As the days went by and we learned that Ms. Jaramillo was not in danger, and was actually the driver, that small bit of solace unraveled. The next few weeks went by in a haze of tears as we made preparations to lay my husband to rest. We were eventually able to see him days after he was prepared the best he could be. The extent of his injuries made it difficult. After a few weeks, our boys went back to school and I went back to work. We're all struggling. Attendance and grades were falling, and I encouraged them just to make it through to the summer break. That offered a degree of relief, and my mother-in-law was kind enough to stay with me and help with watching the boys and basic household things I was struggling to keep up with on my own. Summer went by with none of our usual camping or family vacations, and before I knew it, school was starting again. It became clear to me that I could not perform my job satisfactorily and still be the mother that my children needed to help them get through this difficult time. Just shy of my 10-year anniversary with a company I loved working for and coworkers that I cared deeply for, I chose to resign my health and safety coordinator position. It was a very difficult decision for me, but the company and my coworkers deserve someone that could fully focus on ensuring a safe work environment. I could barely make it through safety orientation training without crying when I would tell new hires the most important reason for them to be safe is their family, and ask them to consider the impact a serious injury or death would have on their loved ones. I was also struggling to complete any complex tasks that required extensive focus. They deserve better, and my children deserve to have a mom that could help with their homework and projects if needed, and make sure they had a decent meal to eat every night, or just be there if they wanted to talk. We do our best to enjoy life as Robert would want us to. We laugh, we joke, we started up some old and new hobbies. We tell stories of funny things he said or did over the years, and there are many. But there is not a day that goes by we don't feel his loss and the hole that his absence leaves. Every morning when I think of how he would wake me up to say goodbye before leaving for work, or when I make my morning coffee and know he would have made it and brought it to me if he was there. When I make one of his favorite meals and know he won't be home to enjoy it with us. Or the first time I excitedly bought his favorite dessert and then cried when it hit me he would not be there to share it with us. When our sons ask me for help And I know they would much rather have asked their dad, and they are missing out on what would have been a bonding moment, and instead turns into me cursing YouTube videos, trying to figure something out that he would have known how to do. When I load the dishwasher, remember how we would debate over where items were supposed to go. Every disagreement or argument we ever had now seems so insignificant, and I wish that we could laugh about it together. Every time we celebrate a birthday or holiday, we miss him. When I see lights and sirens, and I say an extra prayer for everyone involved in this emergency situation. My father passed away this summer, and the one person I wanted to turn to and lean on was not there. It also pains me that there are so many future moments and milestones in our sons' lives they will not have their father to stand by their side to offer support and words of wisdom. Your Honor, the loss of my husband will continue to impact my family for the rest of our lives. I do not want any other families to be devastated by Ms. Jaramillo's selfish and reckless behavior. For that reason, I would ask you to consider the maximum sentence in this case, not out of a place of anger and hate. There's no room in my heart for those emotions. I ask for the protection of others, as that was the driving force behind my husband's desire to become a police officer. I have confidence in your expertise and judgment that you'll sign an appropriate sentence that will prevent Ms. Jaramillo from unleashing the chaos and devastation that she did on March 2nd, 2022, in any other communities and to any other families. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Another very eloquent victim impact statement by the wife of Robert Duran, one of the victims in this case. We need to step aside. When we return, the state plays a touching video tribute to the family of Officer Duran. They made it to honor his life. Keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We are bringing you the sentencing phase in the fake kidnapping murder trial of Jeannine Jaramillo. Now, she faces life in prison for the deaths of Santa Fe police officer Robert Duran and retired Las Vegas firefighter Frank Lovato.
Jaramillo faked her own kidnapping and then led police on a high-speed chase going down the wrong side of the road. That is when Lovato crashed head-on into Duran after swerving to miss Jaramillo. Right now, the state is playing an emotional video tribute to Officer Duran. Let's go back in together.
Somebody I believe in, hold on to me. When I miss the light, the night is stolen. When I'm slamming all the doors you've opened, hold on to me. Hold on to me. Hold on to me when it's too dark to see you. When I am sure I've reached the end. Hold on to me when I When the best of me is barely breathing, when I'm not somebody I believe in, hold on to me. When I miss the light, the night is stolen, when I'm slamming all the doors you've opened, hold on to me. Hold on to me. Hold on to me when it's too dark to see you. When I am sure I've reached the end. Hold on to me when I forget I need you. When I let go, hold me again. When I don't feel like I'm worth defending. When I'm tired of my pretending. Hold on to me. When I start to break in desperation, underneath the weight of expectation, hold on to me. Hold on to me. Hold on to me when it's too dark to see you. When I am sure I've reached the end. Hold on to me when I forget I need you. When I let go, hold me again. I could rest here in your arms forever, 'cause I know nobody loves me better. Hold on to me. Hold on to me. When the best of me is barely breathing, when I'm not somebody I believe in, hold on to me. When I miss the light, the night is stolen, when I'm slamming all the doors you've opened, hold on to me. Hold on to me. Hold on to me when it's too dark to see you. When I am sure I've reached the end. Hold on to me when I forget
much emotion from that convicted felon as she's looking down, not even looking at the pictures. We need to step aside. When we come back, the state presents its argument for the strictest sentence for Jaramillo. Stay here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Let's head back to court now, where the state is arguing for the stiffest sentence possible for the defendant in the fake kidnapping murder trial of Jeannine Jaramillo.
When you sit with a case, and I call it a case, but when you sit with facts and evidence and families and trauma and the law enforcement community and the Lovatos who we've been fortunate enough to get to know in the last couple of weeks as well. You sit with Sergeant Harwell, Agent Harwell, and District Attorney Carmack Altwise as we have as a team over the last 3 years. You look at things and you are intent as a prosecutor, or focused as a prosecutor, to shore up things like motive, intent, and check the boxes on elements of crimes. That's connect the evidence to those elements and the facts. That is what we have spent our careers doing. But time and time again, families want to know why. And we have to tell them we may never know why. We're never going to be able to explain what led to Ms. Jaramillo's decisions and behavior. But even this case is a little bit different. And we've struggled with trying to understand what potentially motivated her that day. As the court knows, there was no legal justification or excuse presented in the form of incapacity, voluntary intoxication during trial, and it really does come down to behavior and conduct, and why she made the decisions over and over and over again on March 2nd, 2022, March 2nd, 2022, and the days that followed. And I don't want to minimize what she said in her letter in terms of her childhood trauma and whatnot, but we know a lot about Ms. Jaramillo and her behavior. We know about her criminal history, and what we can just focus on is potentially what caused this behavior on March 2nd, 2022, and caused her to commit murder and reckless vehicular great bodily injury, among other things, is that she'd gotten away with it. She had gotten away with this type of behavior counting back for her entire adulthood. Going back to convictions of 2015, and we see it over and over and over again. She has zero regard for what other people's property, other people's value of life, and she has taken and taken and taken again, to the point that she made it a career out of it. We saw in videos that we played for the court that, she just gets up early in the morning, waits for people to start their cars so she can, make some money. That's her hustle. And she always knew that if, in fact, there was going to be someone who tried to pull her over, that she would flee the police, would step on the gas, put the pedal to the metal. And that's exactly what she did here. And was it because she'd gotten away with it in September in Cibola County, in October in Cibola County? We'll never know. But that's the only thing I can think of in terms of trying to shore up and trying to figure out the why. There's no moral excuse. We've talked about there's no legal excuse. There's no legal justification. But there is no moral excuse for her conduct and her decisions. It's been a pattern and a way of life for her to disregard the lives of the lives of people and properties of others, always in favor of herself. Everything that she has done has been about her. I don't know if the court noticed during trial, but the only time that there was any sort of evidence of emotion, tears, sniffles, was when she was up on that screen. when it was her interviews being projected, or in District Attorney Carmack Altwise's closing, when it was the compilation of all of her different statements. That is when she reacted. There weren't reactions for the videos. There weren't reactions when the civilians who witnessed this crash were visibly still impacted. She showed emotion when it was her. That is all she has spent her life caring about is her. And when I try to think about the one word that really sums up what we witnessed over the last 5 days of trial, it's depravity. Not in the sense of depraved mind murder. Of course, that is something that was proven beyond a reasonable doubt, but just in terms of the words that go into one of the elements of that crime. It's evil, it's malice, it's extreme reckless behavior, and that's a perfect word that sums up the way Ms. Jaramillo has led her life over the last 20 years. Over and over again, she's made these decisions, and it's her conduct that, of course, is before the court in terms of a sentence. In one video that, again, we showed the court, it wasn't admissible in trial, but in one video taken February 17th, weeks before the homicide, the murder of Mr. Lovato and Officer Duran, and the injuries to Alexis Jenkins. She's in a video and she's talking about stealing cars, taking a license plate to put on the white truck that she's driving around in, and she says, she kind of laughs and says, this things, they happen to everyone. It's no big deal. Quote, life goes on. Didn't go on for Frank Lovato. Life didn't go on.
I'm so glad she mentioned, Judge, the idea that she only seems to react with any emotion when it has to do with her, because you touched on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's like she can't be bothered by any of this until it's about her, and then we know her tears are flowing.
Yeah, and then the tissues start coming out. All right, let's bring in our guest, still with us to discuss, Attorney Michael Jaffer. Michael, in a minute, it's going to be the defense's turn to put on some sort of presentation. I mean, what do they have to do to counteract this, if it's even possible?
I was hoping you would ask that. Here's my answer. Any defense attorney or former defense attorney watching this feels so much guilt for the defense attorney. I've been in these chairs multiple times. We've all sat through our own fair share of sentencing. This is the most difficult part of a criminal defense attorney's job, right? When you have to stand next to somebody at a sentencing where you have nothing to say. There's no factor you can bring up. There's nothing. The whole courtroom is against you. Just imagine being in the center of a pill, and all the shell casing of the pill is all trying to take you, right? That's exactly what you feel like in this position, because at the end of all, look, there's a video, there's an effigy, there's basically a funeral, a wake, there was a sentencing, there's victim impact statements. You had 7 or 8 things completely against your client, and you're sitting next to your client who's a monster, who's been painted as a monster. Then you have to stand up and talk, and then you have to open your mouth and say stuff, and the stuff you have to say can't embarrass you and destroy your career. What do you do? I don't know what the defense attorney is going to do, but we are very, very, practical people. We come up with stuff. We're innovative. For that attorney to have that case this high of a profile, I have to assume that this attorney knows what he's doing, knows what to say. He's going to say something that's not going to completely embarrass him. In the beginning of my career, Michael, I would embarrass myself at these sentencings. I'd have nothing to say, right? And I'd get up there and I'd say stuff. I've had judges laugh at me in the first 2 years of my career, right? Because of how difficult this is. And then you have to become seasoned, experienced, and then you start to know what to say, and more importantly, what not to say. I don't know what the defense attorney is going to say, but this is going to be the most difficult sentencing presentation by any defense attorney. It's not possible. You could tie it. You can't get more difficult than this.
Well, and I have to say 2 things. Number one, the video, watching it again, where you can see the crash on I-25 and you can see them folding the flag for the fallen officer. A visceral reaction. How can she not react to that? But number 2, Michael, she has all kinds of supporters seated behind her, and I know we're running out of time, but I think that makes a significant difference. The defense attorney may not have to say much because she does have support in that courtroom. Michael Jaffer, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We do want to go back to New Mexico for the sentencing phase of the fake kidnapping murder trial. Defendant Jeannine Jaramillo led police on a high-speed chase, reaching speeds over 90 miles per hour, traveling in the wrong direction on a busy highway. 2 people died after a deadly crash on the interstate. Now, police officer Robert Duran and a retired firefighter, Frank Lovato, were both killed. Now, another crash disabled Jaramillo's vehicle. She climbed out, telling police that her boyfriend had been driving and escaped on foot. But prosecutors believe she made the whole thing up, as police never found that man. All right, we're going to get you back inside the courtroom now. The defendant's daughter, Tabitha, is now giving her statement ahead of sentencing. We're in the defendant's case.
My name is Tabitha. I'm writing today on behalf of my mother, Jeannine. I understand the severity of depth of the charges against my mother and the harm that she has caused. She has made poor choices, yet I believe she's still capable of change. I cannot excuse my mother's actions. I can only assure you that she's feeling deeply remorseful about this tragedy. I know in my heart she did not mean to cause any harm. My mother has always been a person who's always put everyone before herself, has done everything and anything to make sure her family and friends were taken care of. She's always been a happy, upbeat, joyful person who has always tried to make everyone laugh. Yet, even though this tragedy has hurt a lot of people, she is also hurting as well, and her family. Her children are still growing up, still minors, who have to live their life without her. Her grandchildren, my youngest, Aria, has never even met her grandma. But we try to get through it. I respectfully ask that the court consider a lenient sentence. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Tabitha.
Thank you, Judy. There are some letters written by my client's grandchildren, and we'd like them read into the record. Thank you.
Do you want my copies?
Yes,
Mine too.
yes.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tabitha. First of all, I would like to say sorry for your guys' loss, for both your losses, and then I'm going to read from her family. We're going to go with her grandsons. My name is Angelo Cordo. I am 9 years old. What I want to say to my grandma, I miss you. I want you back. I just want you to stay the night one day. Also, I want you to spend the birthday with us because you haven't been with us. I love and miss you. Her second grandson. My name is Josiah Cordo, and I am 8 years old. Grandma, I love you with all my heart. I wish you were here right now. I'm super sad when you're not here. I'm so sad I'm not with you, and I cry. I'm super sad because my mom is crying, and my brother is sad that we haven't seen you in a very long time. The best thing when you say to love me, you are the best, Grandma. This has got to come from her sister, I believe. Your Honor, it is with very heart and with great sadness that I write this letter. But I must say, my niece Jeannine has always been a very loving and kind woman, willing to help everyone, anyone in their time of need. That includes even homeless people that she didn't even know. She would hand out hats and gloves and even socks. In recent years, things have changed for her. Given all of her count records, it is very obvious to see that she needs counseling and rehabilitation, and also to feel that it would help to deal with her loss, that I know for the fact that she feels for the 2 men who lost their lives and their family members. Can you imagine having to live with that and not having any support or counseling? I'm also taking in consideration her children and her grandchildren, one of what she has not even met, and is only 1.5 years old. The pain and suffering that her children and grandchildren should not be able to see their mother or grandmother again. My question is, how do you tell other children who are too young to understand? Many people in Albuquerque say that it is well deserved and that the family should have to suffer as much as she does. But just as the family of the victims are innocent, so are the children and grandchildren. I know you will be very fair in your decision. I thank you so much for taking time to read this letter. My prayers and also with you during this time. Cecilia Honora Garcia. Hello, my name is Georgina. Jeannine Jaramillo has 5 kids and 6 grandkids that miss her very much. She was only 14 when she had Fernando, and she was a wife, and she always cooked for her kids hot meals, and she worked hard she worked and had her own trailer and vehicles. She is smart and learns fast, even speaking Spanish without being taught by her parents. She loves to talk to people, but she always was there to listen and not judge. We will miss you and hope the best for you. She grew up fast. Hello, my name is Angelo Cordero. Some memories about Miss G. One thing is she always is ready to watch her grandchildren, and the kids love her deeply. Oh yeah, Miss G taught me how to get out of bed and make something of myself. Laziness was never accommodated in her code. Honestly, she taught me how to be a man, and I really appreciate her for that. Miss G, you always gave me a place over my head when I needed it, to get me a job and make my own money. I know this is not a long letter, but I hope when Miss G's heard this, it puts a smile on her face. Sincerely, Angelo. Thank you.
Your Honor, may we approach?
So predictably, during the reading by her own family, she's crying. Not one bit of an emotion when the other family was speaking. But the more I learn about this defendant, the less it makes sense to me. This is a person with 5 kids and 6 grandkids. She's 49 years old. She had her first kid at 14. And yet here she is. It sounded from the state's closing statement that she began this sort of life at about 2015. She has these types of crimes dating back that far, and something changed for her. You heard the statement from, I think, her aunt. Something changed for her, and she needs help. All right. They took a short break, but however, we're going to go back in now because they're back. They're back from that break. Of course, we've been hitting the pause button to make sure you catch up on everything that we saw as well. So let's get back into that courtroom as the sentencing hearing continues.
Jerry Chavez, and I'm on behalf of Jeannine. She's a very good mother, grandmother. She's fun-loving. She loves people, animals. You know, we go outdoors. We spend time together at Sagebrush Church. We participate in their activities in the evenings and stuff. You know, she's not the kind of person that they're making her out to look like. She's not that kind of a person. You know, there was nothing premeditated about what she did. You know, we argued. She got in an accident. That's it. There's nothing else. So, you know, her children and her grandchildren need her a lot, and she's a big part of their lives, and she's a big part of my life. And you know, I don't know how to say it. We've been in love for several years, and we don't want to lose that. You know, we send our condolences to the families for their loss. But, you know, we weren't responsible for that. Jeannine has a future that she's been trying to accomplish as far as getting help for her problem of using drugs and stuff. Her mental state and her ADHD have her bouncing around, makes her look like she's, you know, doing stuff that she's not supposed to, but actually she's not. She's just enjoying life. You know, when she's tippy-toeing around and stuff, that's just her. You know, she's not a violent person. She's very good with the grandchildren. And I've seen her just with other people. She's real friendly, and she's not a, you know, she's not any kind of a person that would think of hurting anyone else. You know, it's unfortunate that we got into an argument. Every couple gets into an argument. You know, we just weren't able to settle that between ourselves without all this other mess getting involved. You know, I know that there was over 100 officers out. There was 3 helicopters in there. It didn't have to go to what it did. It could have, you know, it could have been stopped if they would have followed the protocol. When I saw Jeannine last, which was 3 years ago, she was pretty upset because we got into an argument and I got called off the wedding and everything because we were planning on getting married and going traveling, going looking at the sites that we haven't seen yet. And you know, I don't know how much longer I have to live, and I wanted to enjoy that with her. You know, we're gonna go just traveling, and now this is putting a big damper on everything. You know, I don't know what else to say, but please, Your Honor, have leniency. I know it looks bad, but I'm asking out of my heart, through God's eyes. Also, I have another statement that I would like to read if I can.
Mr. Silva's doing her sentencing. It's up to him.
Judge, I've asked him not to read that letter, but he understands he has the right to read it.
So you're saying yes?
Yes.
All right.
With all due respect to your court, in the record and for the record, I invoke my First Amendment rights as a witness to the actions of the DA's office. They are, in fact, in violation of the right thing code of ethics. Let me explain. My daughter and myself, we waited for everybody to leave, for our safety, for everybody's safety. Everybody was upset. I have extreme PTSD, and I can't control it. So I stayed here. The bailiff was standing there, and I told him, I can't go out there. So we waited for everybody to leave, and when we got outside, they were all standing in the hallway, laughing and clapping and patting themselves on the back for what, a political move? That's ridiculous. That's insane to be unprofessional. Yeah, and you know, to be laughing at us. You know, are they laughing because I'm a crippled veteran? Or are they laughing because we're Jeannine's family? That's ridiculous. They should be more professional than that. And I do want this on the record, just so it's known that she's in violation of the Code of Ethics of the state of New Mexico. I feel that it was petty actions of the DA to do such childish things. You know, she could have caused, incited a riot. Is what she could have caused if something would have happened. Because I would have defended myself and my family. And that's not a good thing. I didn't want to be doing that because we're not here for that. We're here for Jeannine. So I just wanted to let this be known that was unprofessional, unethical. And Jeannine's not the person that they're trying to make her out to be. She's a way better person. She's a good person by heart, mind, and soul. And like I say, we do go to Sagebrush quite often. And we participate, we help make food baskets. I'm a mechanic, so I help do mechanical things there with the cars and stuff. When people bring their cars to get help. We've gone to grief share and classes like that because I lost my mom and I was very close to her. You know, tomorrow's not promised for everybody. It's not a promise. So we have to acknowledge that we're all going to die one way or another. You know, it's just an accident's an accident. I feel that nobody was murdered. Thank you.
All right, so that's Jerry Chavez. He says the two of them were in love, he and the defendant. Remember, he was a part of this case. He was in that car prior to getting out of the car and her driving off as the police were arriving at the scene. So he was part of the case and he actually testified. Not sure I would have let him give that statement, but the defense attorney did. We'll talk about it in a minute. Right now, we're going to take a break. Now, when we come back, we're going to hear from the defendant herself. It's her turn to speak as she becomes emotional while pleading for leniency. Keep it here on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, breaking down today's big hearing in the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. We'll bring you the latest as our experts weigh in.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
People wanted answers, but people started locking their doors.
You know what it means. You know what you did, right?
Please hear me out. Please.
I said, OJ, everybody thinks you're guilty.
4.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We're going to go back inside that courtroom now. The court is hearing from the defendant, Jeannine Jaramillo herself. She's giving her statement ahead of sentencing in the fake kidnapping murder trial in New Mexico.
Your Honor, I'd like to say I'm sorry to the family with all my heart. If I could take back that day, I would. I made bad choices. I was on drugs and I was drinking, but I also have my family that I'm hurting. Putting me away many years is not going to bring them back. God knows.
Okay, after you apologize to them, address me, please.
On that day, me and my fiance had a terrible fight. And we did let this get out of control. But I would never, ever plan on hurting anybody. Much less killing anybody. God knows what's in my heart. It was an accident. I did not look into them. I am not an evil person. I've gotten closer to God, and I thank God every day for helping me think more clearly and to understand. I miss my family, taking my grandkids to school, and my kids, and I want to meet my baby girl, my granddaughter. I'm not a bad person. I am so sorry for what I've done for my actions. If I could take it back, I would. I would never hurt anybody. I didn't wreck into anybody on purpose. I would never do this. I know I've had hard times in the past, like, similar to these, and what goes on inside of the person that uses drugs in their mind is that you just gotta run. You just run and you just go and you get away. You just try to take it all away. And that's coming from somebody who used drugs. I made bad choices and I've always tried to get away from that. I went to Crossroads for Women when I felt I didn't have any family, and they became my family. They helped me get an apartment. They helped me get my kids back, Your Honor. I deserve a second chance, Your Honor, please. For my family and myself, I would never do that. I would never cause harm. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Judge. With that, on behalf of the client, she understands that she's facing some mandatory prison time. She does ask that you factor in her remorse. She asks that you factor in her history of drug use and being a victim of domestic violence, and run her charges concurrent. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's all fun and games until somebody gets hurt. It'd be believable, except early that same morning, she's on Facebook talking about she's going to get a car, make some money, and if they chase her, she's going to run. Just rings hollow, and I'm sure it rings hollow for that family of the victim sitting in the courtroom. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, the judge addresses the defendant and then issues her sentence. So keep it here on Court TV Live.
Vanity.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala, back now to New Mexico for the fake kidnapping murder trial of Jeannine Jaramillo. Now, she's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Santa Fe police officer Robert Duran and retired Las Vegas firefighter Frank Lovato. Both died in a head-on crash during a police chase. Now, she has been convicted, and now she faces life sentences after being convicted in their deaths. I want to get you back to court. The judge is addressing Jaramillo before actually issuing her sentence. The only question here is whether she gets life with parole or without.
Myself along the way here. On March 2nd of 2022, Robert Duran got up in the morning. He put on his Santa Fe police officer uniform, got in his patrol car, and went to work. He went to work to protect and serve the Santa Fe community. Unfortunately for him, you came to our community that day on a lark. In a white Chevy Malibu you stole out of Las Vegas, New Mexico, you drove up to a concerned citizen on his way to his car to go to the grocery store. Help, call 911, I'm being held at knife point. And then you were off. This was a priority 1 for law enforcement, the highest level. Santa Fe police officers started searching for a vehicle matching the description given to the 911 operator, a white car, and they found you. Rather than stop, you led them through busy streets, driving in the opposite lane of traffic at times, on residential streets. And then you purposely drove onto the exit ramp on Interstate 25, going directly against the oncoming traffic. The length of time you led officers on this high-speed chase and the choices you made on where and how you went told the officers that you were in real danger from this awful knife-wielding person. If they did not stop this vehicle, you would be killed. Also on March 2nd, 2022, Frank Lovato, a retired firefighter, was driving southbound on I-25, as so were so many other cars. When you came upon them, you took split-second maneuvers to avoid. They took split-second maneuvers to avoid you. And just after Frank Lovato swerved to avoid you, boom! Robert Duran and Frank Lovato crashed into one another. A fatal crash. Frank Lovato didn't die right away. An officer or officers on the scene watched him take his last breath. And after you sideswiped a truck trying to avoid a head-on collision with you, your tire flattened, your airbag deployed, and finally you came to a stop. Immediately you're out of the car. Did you ask if anyone was hurt? Did you plead for mercy for your depraved actions? No, you lied. I am talking.
I was trying to get on the freeway the right way. I was trying to get on the freeway the right way.
I am sentencing you. I am making observations, and you may not interrupt me. Did you plead for mercy for your depraved actions? No, you lied. You played the part of a freed hostage. He tried to kill me. I'm so scared. He's going to come after me. You kept this up from the time you exited your stolen vehicle, in the patrol car to the hospital, in the hospital, in the interview room while you were alone, knowing cameras were taping you. Police are so concerned for you. They have one of their own and a first responder dead, and they comfort you. We're so glad you're alive. And after trying to save your life, they find out that they've been duped severely. And after you've been found out, what do you say?
I'm not a murderer. I am not.
I am going.
I'm not a murderer.
Stop talking, please. Let my judge finish.
What did you say after you'd been found out? I'm sorry for my reckless driving, but I didn't crash. I didn't cause the crash between Officer Duran and Frank Lovato. What's that implication?
I was not in that crash.
After 5 days of evidence and testimony, the jury said you did. You have been convicted on 2 first-degree murder charges and other related charges. You have taken the life of 2 outstanding members of our community, a police officer and a retired emergency responder. And you did so in the most egregious, deplorable way. Their families, friends, and fellow officers' lives have been changed forever. At the end of the day, all these officers wanted to do was their job, to protect and serve, to save you. Your crimes were not just against these 2 individuals, but against the entire Santa Fe community and beyond. What you did that day reminds us that we are vulnerable to the whims of very bad people. It resonates with all citizens of the community how vulnerable we were that day at your hands. I want you to stand for your sentence. With respect to count 1, first-degree murder, Frank Lovato, I'm sentencing you to life imprisonment. With respect to count 2, first-degree murder, Robert Duran, I'm sentencing you to life imprisonment. With respect to count 3, I'm sentencing you to 3 years. Count 4 merges with count 1 and 2. With respect to count 5, I'm sentencing you to 3 years. With respect to count 6, I'm sentencing you to a year less a day. With respect to count 7, I'm sentencing you for a year less a day. Counts 3, 5, 6, and 7 are going to run concurrent to one another, and they will run concurrent to count 2. Thank you. You have the right to appeal.
Your Honor, in terms of count 3...
No, I'm not finding it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I think the judge really summed it up. I mean, it's really just unbelievable the way she was reacting. The defendant was reacting to what the judge was saying. She clearly does not get it. But she said, your actions remind us that we're at the mercy of people like you, go out and make terrible decisions, and people die. And she just doesn't seem to get it. Let's bring in our guest joining us to discuss, trial attorney Marjorie Mesidor. Marjorie, I'm rather speechless at what I just saw from this defendant. To me, you know, we saw her speak to the court. That wasn't who she is. The person she was sitting there, the way she was reacting to what the judge was saying, that's the real person who this defendant is.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that every bit of what we've reviewed over the past 5 days, what was shared by her loved ones, and what we saw here is evident of a number of things. This is poor choices, poor impulse control, lack of support, lack of community support. Even her loved ones in their statements. Okay, the loved one who spoke about the actions of the district attorney. Again, poor choice, poor impulse control, lack of accountability over and over again. That is not only who she is, but that seemingly is what surrounded her. The judge saw it, we all saw it, it was read very well, and that is precisely why she got the sentence that she got today.
Yeah, and the sentence that she received was life in prison without the possibility of parole. There are a number of other 3 years on count 3, 3 years on count 5. That will run concurrent, will run the life sentences. But at the end of the day, she's done. Her family will never have contact with her again outside the walls of a prison. But, you know, some of this became clear. Throughout this trial, we kept saying, you know, what happened here? What was going on? And some of the statements, you know, gave some clarity. Looks like drugs and alcohol were involved, which we all speculated might be the case. She had previously been caught with some methamphetamines, so we thought that was involved. And then one of her the family members talked about there was a change at one point, and she needs help. She needs counseling. She said she had gone to counseling, seeking out help for lack of family. She had a lot of family at courtroom, so I don't know what she's talking about. But at least there seemed to be some clarity, as you mentioned, about what might have happened with this woman.
Whatever level of rehabilitation that was attempted for whatever level of addiction that she had, it doesn't seem that it had really borne any real fruit. Certainly not if we believe her rendition that there was an argument and she got into an accident, which is inconsistent with the story of fleeing out of the car, saying that she was being held at knife point. The way that the judge recounted those last few hours, the level of resources, time, money, how much of themselves that the law enforcement and first responders put into trying to save a life that was not in danger and the like, it really just speaks volumes. And to hear the loved one say that, to oversimplify it, saying that it was just an accident, that it was not murder, that it was not premeditated, to say that they don't get it is a complete and utter understatement. Even the letters from the children and the grandchildren also, I think, was in poor choice and also in poor taste. They read more like, you know, something that would be said at a funeral than it would be something at a sentencing. A lot of it was, have mercy on me, I have a family too. It won't bring back these individuals. Again, no accountability. This is probably one of the worst sentencing structures or layouts that I've ever seen. And it is no mystery and it is no surprise that she essentially got the book thrown at her.
Marjorie, I couldn't agree more. And my question is, how much of that do we put on the defense attorney? I'd said earlier that I thought he should have stopped Jerry Chavez when he was talking. He wanted to go into this whole idea, and I'll ask you about that as well, this idea that he was upset because he had walked out and saw the prosecutors, at least according to him, laughing and celebrating their victory in this case. And he talked about the fact that, you know, there was, you know, it might have caused a riot. To me, that was borderline threat on his part, that he would have attacked them in some way, or they might have been hurt because this family was forced to see them celebrating. But how much of this goes on the shoulders of the defense attorney? It's hard to stop families from saying what they're going to say, but you got to advise them that some of the things that they were saying here just were inappropriate under the circumstances.
I totally agree, but at the end of the day, our roles of attorneys is we're only advisors. We can only advise. We can only tell you that this is not a good idea and this is what may happen if you do it. People are free to choose to either go along with that advice or to completely ignore it. And in circumstances like this, where where for whatever reason, whether it's because you don't have client control or you have not built up the rapport with your client and their family, this is essentially what can happen, the absolute worst.
Yeah, no question about it. So ultimately, justice, at least as it exists currently for Frank Lovato and Robert Duran and their families, Jeannine Jaramillo sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Marjorie Mesidor, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Truly appreciate it. We'll see you again real soon, folks. Stick around.